Hello everyone, this is Nitpicking Nerd and this is my review of episode 4 of season 2 of Lower Decks, and once again I think this was a very funny episode, as always with a lot of correct references to all the other Star Trek shows and no longer feeling like it's just Easter eggs for the sake of it. Instead it feels like it's simply set in the Trek universe and it connects a lot of things from the various Star Trek shows which usually were not really that connected, there were gaps between the shows. And yet in this episode they kind of connected things from all the Star Trek shows and tied it all together as if it's simply set in the same universe, and they took all kinds of silly things from the previous shows and they made them better than they were before. So it really feels as if it's actually improving the Trek universe, it's building upon it, and so it's not just member bearers. It's not just recycling the good things. Instead, it's taking the sillier things and making them better. And that's what a good sequel should be doing. Not just cashing on the nostalgia, but instead setting the story in the same universe and playing with it and improving upon it and building on it. And so that's what it feels like. So this actually became a really good show. Even though it's not perfect, I do have a few small nitpicks, a few small complaints of missed opportunities and stuff like that. So it's not perfect, but very enjoyable, very entertaining, and I probably laughed hardest at all the adult humor jokes, which I didn't expect. It really surprised me, and maybe that's why it was so funny. And those of you who are familiar with my old edits of Star Trek, I used to do a lot of adult jokes and stuff like that, so I guess it fits my sense of humor. And I also now appreciate that they brought Shax back because he is a very funny character. He's basically a parody of Worf. He's a Bajoran Worf, the tough guy of the team and all of that. And so they played with that aspect of him in this episode in a very funny way. So I'm happy that he's back in the show. Even though, as I said before, it makes his death scene in season 1 kind of less dramatic and so on. But still, it's worth it to have him as a character because he is kind of funny. And speaking of tough people, once again we see Mariner being the best at everything without even trying and all of that, which was always a little bit annoying in the show. And the only way I could kind of forgive it when I realized they're kind of doing it deliberately, like it's a parody of Michael Burnham from Discovery. And I think in this episode they kind of winked at that directly. I think there was a scene when she said something about, they defeated the bad guys using the power of math or something like that, which was very similar to an actual line in Star Trek Discovery. So I think it's obvious that they're kind of deliberately poking fun at similar things from all the shows, and so that's why I can kind of forgive what they're doing. But it once again kind of annoyed me a little bit when they showed how she beats them up in Ambujitsu, the ultimate evolution of martial arts, and these guys have been training secretly at night so that they'll be able to defeat her, and yet she still defeats them anyway. So that kind of annoyed me a little bit, but what I did like in this episode is that they kind of hinted at an explanation. So the first scene of her kicking ass was used for the story. It wasn't just there just to show that she's awesome, but it was used for the story in which they begin to suspect that maybe she's a secretly Section 31 agent or something like that she was specially trained, and that's why she's the best at everything, at least in the physical confrontations and all of that. So it was actually used for the story. That trait of her of being such a badass was used for the story of them starting to get scared of her because she's so dangerous, that she's been trained to be the ultimate weapon and all of that. So I actually kind of like that because, I always said I don't have a problem with tough characters if it makes sense, if there is an explanation. So if they actually use this as an actual explanation, that will be fine. If they said, she's been secretly trained much better than any other officer and all of that, then that's kind of an explanation. So I actually kind of like that, even though in the end they revealed that, it's just a rumor that she started. But I think we can assume that maybe she started the rumor to make it look fake, to hide the fact that it's actually not fake, that maybe later on in the show they will reveal that there is something to it, and so that will actually be interesting and neat, I think. And so I actually kind of like that whole aspect of this kind of character development, of revealing that she has kind of a secret history and all of that. They did say that she served on Deep Space Nine previously and all of that, and how Section 31 used to recruit people from there all the time. So actually it would kind of make sense if they tie it all together that way. So that would explain why she's such a well-trained fighter and all of that, and not just because she's enjoying training so much that she's better than everyone. So that actually would explain it. So anyway, we have this scene of Ambujitsu, the ultimate form of martial arts, which I remember back from TNG. And I always kind of wanted to see it again because that was one of those kinds of scenes which is kind of ridiculous in a good way because it's kind of unintentional comedy. So I really enjoyed seeing it again, and I think there was a little bit of a missed opportunity. They didn't show it exactly as it was shown in TNG, because in that scene of TNG they used those sticks as kind of sensors. You know, they were basically fighting blind, and they were using the sticks to sense where the opponent is, and then they were fighting blind. And yet in this scene, they don't seem to be using any sensor. They're just fighting, and also apparently able to see each other despite that eye cover, and so it didn't make any sense, and so it wasn't exactly as it should have been, but overall it was still fun to see these costumes again and all of that. And also when we see the ship's gym, we see some guys lifting weights, and I think it was a missed opportunity not to show those kinds of weights that you can adjust, like we once saw Nog using on Deep Space Nine. He was lifting weights and was pressing something on the weights to make them either heavier or lighter, and there was like a red light or something, so they should have shown like maybe red lights on those weights in the gym, and then that will be a neat reference to that. So that was a small missed opportunity, I think, but I guess we can assume those weights are adjustable with the gravity and all of that. We just didn't see that, so that's in my head canon at least. And another small nitpick, after she beat them up, we see them sitting with modern day looking bandages on them, so that annoyed me a little bit because don't they have the technology to heal wounds like that instantly in a few seconds? So why would they be wearing bandages and having black eyes? Unless maybe we can explain it that they're afraid to go to sickbay because of the cat doctor who is a little bit nuts and all of that, so maybe they just didn't want to go to sickbay because of that, and they treated it themselves, and that's why they have the old style bandages and all of that. And the next scene they do have all their wounds healed completely, so maybe that was actually some futuristic bandages, and maybe their injuries were extremely severe, and so maybe the bandages were actually healing something very severe. You know, we did see in some episodes of Trek that people do wear something to heal themselves. You know, Picard, after he was freed from the Borg, he did have something on his head healing him and all of that, so we can assume that the bandages that look like today's bandages are actually some super duper medical technology that is actually healing very severe wounds that she gave them, that they almost died from, and so in just a few hours it completely heals them. So I guess they can explain that. I wish that would be more obvious, like if they actually showed that their injuries are extremely severe, and so then it will make sense that it takes a while to heal it. So I guess we can explain that. Maybe they should have added a quick line that they're not wanting to go to sickbay because of the crazy doctor there. Then that would also explain it. And I liked the crazy bartender who's wearing the same uniform as the waiters in TNG always did, and he's kind of a conspiracy nut and all of that, and then he tells them about Mariner being Black Ops and all of that. So, and you know, every time he tells it, everything becomes dark and all of that. That was funny. And we see Mariner doing the bishop knife trick on the table, so that was a nice reference, I think. And we have a scene of some Denobulan scientists on a planet, and when they get scared, their face blows up, just like we saw Phlox do in only one episode of Enterprise. When he gets scared, his face becomes like a blowfish, and so that was a cute reference, once again showing how much attention to detail they have on the show, that they take all kinds of little things from all the Trek shows and play with them and expand upon them, and so that was nice, I thought, even though it's a shame we didn't see these characters again later in the episode. They just disappeared, so I guess they died. So that's disappointing, but I did like the Denobulan reference, and the gorilla creature is something from an episode of TOS, which honestly I don't remember much of. It was one of the sillier episodes, I think, when Kirk was stuck on some planet and was fighting these creatures, but once again it shows how much this show cares about the details. They're bringing back all kinds of silly things from previous shows and actually making them better, making it more interesting. That's what a good sequel should be doing. Why not take something that was an interesting idea that was just poorly executed and actually making it better this time, instead of simply recycling the same things that was popular over and over, which is kind of the safe bet, which is what they usually do in remakes and sequels and all of that. And I've always said for years that why not take the sillier things and actually making them better. That's what The Mandalorian was also good at. Instead of simply recycling the most popular things over and over again, they took the smaller, sillier things that we saw before and actually improved them and actually made them more interesting. And then that will also retroactively make the older shows or movies better, because you then recognize those things. If you ever rewatch it, then you'll recognize those things that the newer show actually improved. And also it made this episode be about something. It's not just a bunch of action or a bunch of jokes. It's actually having some kind of story, some kind of moral message, in this case about animal rights and all of that, that it's wrong to mistreat animals and all of that. So all those scenes actually makes it all about something, which is what Star Trek should be doing, telling stories with some kind of message to them. It wasn't really a big part of the episode, but at least we did have some kind of scenes like that. That it's wrong to enslave animals just to harvest the horns of these creatures, just to sell them if you can just replicate the same thing. And so, that is something that we actually can say even today. Like, why would someone want those kinds of memorabilias from animals and all of that, what, just for the look of it, if you can just create artificially the same kind of thing that looks exactly the same? So why would you want to harm actual animals for it? So I think the message in the episode, which is actually correct, so that little line they had against the Ferengi, like, why would you try so hard to make money off of that stuff if you can just replicate anything you want? And they actually brought back the greedy Ferengi from the early TNG days. They even had the same kind of lightsaber whips that they had in season 1 of TNG. So finally we see that again. That's also something that they kind of never brought back, maybe because it was kind of too silly, but in the context of this episode, because they're dealing with animals, it kind of makes sense. So they're using these energy whips against these creatures, so it kind of makes sense, and it basically brings back the greedy old Ferengi from season 1 of TNG, which they directly kind of poked fun at in the episode when Mariner says, why are you those kinds of Ferengi from the last outpost and all of that, which was the name of that episode in season 1 of TNG. And in the previous season of this show, I highly praised that episode when they revealed that not all Ferengi are like that. When they had the scene of Boimler basically being a racist against Ferengi, thinking that all Ferengis are like that. And it's later revealed that that Ferengi was actually civilized and not like that. He was just pretending to be like that and all of that. So I thought that was a brilliant joke, which also corrected something which was kind of a little bit iffy about the older shows, that sometimes the show itself would be kind of racist against the invented races that they had on the show, that always showing that they're all like that and all of that. So in this episode, they're kind of bringing back the old style of Ferengi. And also I like that in the end they did have a compromise, that in the end they didn't just defeat them with violence, but they actually make a compromise with them, which is also something that Star Trek used to be about in the old shows. That was the best kind of resolution of conflicts, in which it was about brains, not just defeating and killing the bad guys. And instead, when they have some bad guy which is not totally evil, it's just some kind of misunderstanding or some kind of political conflict and all of that, and then they resolve it in the end. That's what made Star Trek special, in my opinion. Unlike many other shows and movies, in which it's just about who's stronger, in Star Trek it was much more brainy, it was much more diplomatic in many of the best episodes. And so I love the fact that in the end of this episode they actually resolved the conflict peacefully, and they still had a bunch of action in the episode. So it's not as if the episode is boring because of that, but I do love that message. I do love the fact that they bring back that aspect of Star Trek which was missing for so long, about actually solving problems with the brain and not just your weapons or your fighting skills and all of that. So that's something I also really like in this episode. So it had some kind of message, and it was so entertaining on top. So a lot of very good jokes. That whole part of them being scared of Mariner, thinking that she might snap and kill everyone because she's secretly the ultimate weapon and all of that. So that was kind of funny. And the Mugato creatures themselves were also hilarious, especially that scene when they were hiding from them and suddenly they hear noises and they say, what are they doing? And so, oh no, they're mating, and we hear kind of banging and all of that. And then we see a third one come out of the bushes, and you think there's going to be, a fight for dominance, but instead, no, he just he just lets them go on, and he watches. He likes to watch, and then he touches his horn and all of that. So that part really cracked me up because it was so unexpected. I didn't expect such a crude adult joke be in this show, which is kind of a cartoon for the whole family and all of that, and yet they're doing a kind of a nasty joke. So that actually made me laugh the hardest. And I like the end when they defeated the Ferengi by showing them a chart of potential profit, that they would make more money if they simply turn this place into a zoo and have visitors, instead of just harnessing the animals, but instead making it a preserve and to invite tourists and all of that. And then the Ferengi agreed. That was a very nice touch, and I loved how that scene began with them coming as if to shoot the Ferengi, as if they made some kind of improvised some kind of weapon, which looked exactly like the weapon that Kirk improvised in one episode when he was fighting against the Gorn, and he made basically a rocket launcher out of some wood or something. So it begins as if it's going to be the same thing, but instead it's a projector that shows the Ferengi a chart of how they can make more profit, and then they reach a compromise with the Ferengi. So that was brilliant. I think that was both very good reference and making it unexpectedly funny, and also a good message to it. And so overall, all of it together made this episode really good in my opinion. Really entertaining and funny, and actually having the Star Trek spirit to it. And it kind of ties together the entire Star Trek universe, and it expands upon it, it builds upon it, it makes it better. It makes the silliest parts of the old shows better than it was before. Instead of being ashamed of it, it plays with it pokes fun at it in a loving way, and makes it better. That will make it more fun now to rewatch the older shows, because then it will tie together with this show. So the show is actually improving in my opinion, and I think I can now officially say that I love this show now. So that's my opinion. Let me know what you think, and we can discuss all of this in the comments below. And I will see you all next time. Bye bye.